StarCraft has some very interesting characters, but there's something terrifying about Arcturus Mengsk. Mengsk is the radical leader of the Sons of Korhal, a revolutionary group fighting against the Terran Confederacy. In many other games, you can predict where the game is going. You understand that certain characters that are good are probably going to end up turning evil, and perhaps some bad ones are going to end up turning good. And as for some of the more reprehensible missions, you can have a certain degree of separation, thinking, if I had a say in the matter, I wouldn't do things this way. But when you are introduced to Arcturus Mengsk, little do you know, things are going to be different this time around. In this video, I'm going to explain how. Hi, I'm Alex. I make video games and I like to make videos about them. I also make plenty of videos like this one where I examine a story, particularly in video games, as they can tell stories in ways that other mediums can't. If either of those things interest you, please consider subscribing. Your introduction as the player to the Confederacy is quite brilliant. In the very first mission of StarCraft, the player assumes the role of a Terran magistrate, tasked with overseeing the planet of Mars-Sara. The story really kicks off in Mission 2 with the Zerg invasion threatening the planet, and the player's objective is to clear the map of the Zerg forces. As the player progresses, they encounter an infested command center, a clear sign of the Zerg infestation's severity. So naturally, you destroy it. I can see the comments now. But Alex, how is this different from the culling? If you think the culling is wrong, then why would you naturally just destroy a Terran command center?
Let's burn this mother down!
This enrages Confederate General Edmund Duke, who tells you that your army is under arrest. This paints a picture of the Confederacy to us right away. They are extreme and they follow the law to the letter, unwilling to hear if there are extenuating circumstances. They just don't care. They arrest your troops and continue to ignore taking action against the Zerg, which are an immediate threat to the planet as they are multiplying in number and attacking innocent Terrans. But there is hope. The Sons of Korhal. Arcturus Mengsk communicates with you. You know that he is the leader of an extremist group. The adjutant told you so just moments before, but the charismatic, smooth-talking leader seems pretty reasonable. He says,
"You're familiar with the Confederate propaganda surrounding my group, but your reputation suggests you'll see past it."
This is an incredibly intriguing thing for him to say, because having just dealt with the slimy General Duke, you see the Confederacy in a pretty negative light. You wouldn't be mistaken to think that it's quite possible that Mengsk has just been given a bad rap by those who have no place in giving it.
I'm going to make you an offer, Magistrate. I'd like to help you out by sending down a number of transports to your colony and evacuating any survivors. You know, of course, that our organization operates outside the bounds of Confederate law. That's why they spread their lies and misinformation.
Naturally, there is only one choice. After holding off the Zerg for 30 minutes, the Sons of Korhal arrive to save you. Once you are rescued, Jim Raynor, the stand-up protagonist, says,
"Hey man, Arcturus's boys sprung me from the prison ship. Apparently they're as frustrated with the Confederates as we are. I know their reputation, but they seem to be on the level."
The approval of Raynor reinforces our beliefs. Things seem to be looking up. Arcturus states that we are leaving Mars-Sara, but before we do, he wants us to raid the Mars-Sara Confederate outpost to retrieve whatever design or weapon schematics that we can find in their network. Since the Confederates are abandoning the planet, it seems like a reasonable request. After retrieving the data disks, we head to Antigua Prime. Antigua Prime is ready to begin an open revolt against the Confederacy, but unfortunately General Duke is here as well, and is determined to keep the planet under Confederate control. Like a magician, the game focuses our attention on General Duke rather than Arcturus, because it's quite the coincidence that in all the galaxy we arrive at the same planet as General Duke. You lead a successful mission against the Confederates and free the Antiguans who begin their revolt. And then something interesting happens. General Duke is attacked by Zerg and has crash-landed and is under attack. Raynor says exactly what we are thinking.
Zerg? Here? Serves them right. About time they got a taste of what it's like to be, and they're mixing it up.
But then this happens. Arcturus wants us to go save General Duke. He says,
"Listen, I know Duke's a cold-hearted bastard, but an entire colony shouldn't have to suffer for that. Besides, a Confederate general could prove to be a powerful ally. This is an opportunity we cannot miss.
We've seen that Arcturus has a logical side, but it seems now that he has a compassionate side. At least, we think he has both sides. In reality, it is very likely that Arcturus was chasing Duke because he needed Duke to help him assault Tarsonis. It's even possible that he had access to the psi emitter earlier than we are aware of and drew the Zerg to Antigua to attack Duke. But the point is, Arcturus was never compassionate. He just wanted us to think so he could manipulate us. When we rescue General Duke,
You're about the last folks I expected to show up. What's your angle here, Mengsk?
Arcturus just explains the facts plainly.
The Confederacy is falling apart, Duke. Its colonies are in open revolt. The Zerg are rampaging unchecked. What would have happened if they hadn't shown up?
Your point.
I'm giving you a choice. You can return to the Confederacy and lose, or you can join us and help save our entire race from being overrun by the Zerg. I don't think it's a difficult decision.
General Duke begrudgingly agrees. The situation at the end of the day wasn't very different from ours when Arcturus saved us, and now we get to see Arcturus' tactics from another perspective. We then get a briefing with Jim and Kerrigan and Mengsk. It turns out that the data disks didn't contain schematics for a weapon, but rather it contained information for a psi emitter that acts as a beacon that reaches across worlds to draw in the Zerg. Arcturus tells us the Confederates used these psi emitters to draw the Zerg to Marsara. Just more reason to hate the Confederates. But there is something I think we are missing here, something important. Did Arcturus have plans for us beforehand too? Perhaps the data disks were a ruse. Perhaps the psi emitter belonged to Arcturus all along. Perhaps he brought the Zerg to Marsara so that he could get us. He condemned and blamed the Confederates for developing the Zerg to use them as a weapon. But not only do we never actually see for certain that this is the case with the Confederacy, but we later see that this is the very behavior utilized by Mengsk. And in fact, we willingly go along with it. Arcturus asks Kerrigan to place a psi emitter in the Confederate base. At any point in the game so far, it is reasonable to suspect Arcturus of being a villain. After all, despite his charm and logic, we were introduced to him as an extremist leader. But it isn't until this mission that we truly start to see the sinister side of him emerging. And yet, we don't really have a good enough reason to doubt him yet. Arcturus' logic has been extremely sound up until this point, and he has proven himself to be a very confident and competent leader. He states that this is the plan for us to make our escape. So if this is the way we have to do that, then so be it. Because the power of the enemy in this mission just reinforces the fact that despite the revolts, the Confederates are still very much in power, and we need to get away whatever way we can.
Psi emitter in place. Just promise me we'll never do anything like this again.
We will do whatever it takes to save humanity. Our responsibility is too great to do any less.
We really get to see a glimpse of his true thoughts. He doesn't care how often he has to use that device or how many worlds are destroyed because of it. Only that humanity is saved, but I don't really buy that he really means that. At this point in the story, it seems pretty obvious that that's a lie, that all he really cares about is power. And the next mission pretty much proves that. To get to the Confederate homeworld, Tarsonis, we need to break through the Confederates' defenses, but it is none other than General Duke who tells us the plan. Seems strange for a guy who is so pro-Confederacy to go along with Arcturus' plans, but then again, we've gone along with all his plans as well, and it was really only up until recently that the true concerns were being raised. When we complete the mission, General Duke says,
This is Duke. The emitters are secured and online.
Who authorized the use of psi emitters?
I did, Lieutenant.
he has placed the psi emitters, something that we the player have been intentionally kept out of the loop of. It is clear that Arcturus no longer trusts us, and he is taking things too far, and just using us as he doesn't seem to trust us with the big picture anymore, or perhaps we just aren't needed as much since he has General Duke now, and this seems like quite the betrayal. But is it really that surprising? Tarsonis is the capital world of the Confederacy, Arcturus doesn't have the manpower to take on a force of that size on his own, but bringing the Zerg there will do the trick, and if the Zerg come, so will the Protoss. What's brilliant about this moment is when you really step back to think about this, it actually seems inevitable that something like this was going to happen, and that's the brilliant thing about Arcturus Mengsk. That's the terrifying thing. Because when you play his missions, it makes you feel like it's what you have to do, whether you like it or not. You know you can't trust Mengsk, you know he's up to something, but he's always one step ahead, and you see that brutally in the next mission when Kerrigan is sent down to the planet. At this point, Raynor is saying everything we are thinking, at least what I was thinking.
First you sell out every person on this world to the Zerg. Then you ask us to go up against the Protoss. And you're gonna send Kerrigan down there with no backup?
I have absolute confidence in Kerrigan's ability to hold off the Protoss.
This is bullshit.
But Kerrigan still believes in Mengsk, that even though she might not get his plan, that she can trust that he knows what he's doing. And so, despite the fact that you probably disagree with the mission, you are helpless but to play along and do your best to protect Kerrigan, as you have to protect the hostile Zerg who will attack you from the back of your base, from the Protoss who are assaulting you from the front. After you destroy the Protoss, the Zerg have amassed so many units that they swarm your base. Kerrigan asks for backup, and Arcturus gives the order to leave Kerrigan behind. This is the moment that we truly know Arcturus is pure evil. We even get an epic villainous speech before the final mission of the Terran campaign.
You're making a terrible mistake. Don't even think to cross me. I have sacrificed too much to let this fall apart.
You mean like you sacrificed Kerrigan?
You'll regret that. You don't seem to realize my situation here. I will not be stopped. Not by you, or the Confederates, or the Protoss, or anyone. I will rule this sector, or see it burn to ashes around me. If you try to get...
The fleet is prepped and ready, Commander.
He was an extremist leader of a rebellious organization that was trying to overthrow the Confederacy. It should not be a surprise that we are where we are, and yet somehow it kind of did come as a surprise. Sure, he was a rebel, but at first he seemed like a noble, compassionate rebel, akin to one of the Star Wars rebel leaders. Our own frustration towards the Confederacy blinded us to the reality that Arcturus Mengsk might still be worse. One of my favorite parts of RTS games is that when you get to the end of a campaign that you just beat, and the realization kicks in that the army you have spent the entire campaign building up to be an unstoppable powerhouse is now going to be your enemy in the next campaign. In this mission, you get that very same feeling, except this time you get to fight the might of that force in the same campaign while just having a small force yourself. You have to destroy an ion cannon so that we can escape the system, and as we do that, the campaign comes to a close. I love how in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, you get to watch as a democracy slowly turns into a dictatorship. It's a very interesting and important cautionary tale. StarCraft's first mission tells a cautionary tale too, but it is instead about how a dictator can come to power by force, and how, in the right circumstances, even we can be manipulated into helping. Well, that's it for now. If you have any thoughts, if you feel I've missed anything, or perhaps some of the information I didn't use from outside of the first campaign is somehow relevant to any of this, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.